Hey everybody, I'm going to make a Starlord guide for you, but before we get into it, I do want to say that I recorded this entire 30-minute long video, and then I looked back at the footage and it was super choppy, and I realized that this game was utilizing like 100% of my GPU, completely destroyed my recording. Now I have to do this whole thing over again. Okay, so please enjoy the video. So let's get right into it. And I'm going to be talking about the abilities, and don't skip forward. I am going to go over the basics of how each ability works, but I'm also going to give some tips and tricks and whatnot on how each ability works and like how you should use them. So first up, we have his M1, which obviously is just, shooting your gun. But I do want to say that your damage to a single target is actually quite ridiculous. So if you go for headshots on a tank, or just in general, you can see that one mag does a ridiculous amount of damage, especially when you're going for headshots. So in general, you're going to want to be going for a lot of headshots and even shooting the tank if you can get headshots, because your damage is actually ridiculous. The other thing I want to mention is that you do have damage fall off starting at the 10-meter mark, which is right here to the target. So I'm doing full damage here, but all the way up to 25 meters, which is all the way back here, I have damage fall off, and then anything past the 25-meter mark does not have damage fall off. And the damage fall off caps off at 40% damage reduction. So from this range, I'm only going to be doing 60% of my normal damage. So that's something to keep in mind. In general, on Starlord, you're gonna want to be using your M1 from at least a relatively close distance, otherwise you're going to have some pretty big damage fall off. Other than that, the only other thing I want to talk about with M1 is that when you're shooting your gun, let's say that I'm fighting another Starlord. If I'm shooting him and then he does like a dash, or let's say I'm fighting Rocket and they dash midway through, don't spray your entire mag trying to track them, because you have a very limited mag size on Starlord and you can like mag dump really fast. What you want to do is spray the moment they do something like erratic where it's hard to track, wait to shoot them until it's easy for you to track again, and then finish spraying. And then that way you're not wasting bullets in your mag. If you've ever played Tracer, it's called like, I don't know, trigger discipline or whatever. Make sure you're not over spraying when it's like pretty much insane to try to track somebody. Next, we have the M2, and all it does at a baseline is reload your gun and make you dodge roll in the air. So, but there's a few cool things about this. One is that while you're dodging, you have a 0.37 second invulnerability window. So you can use it to dodge weapon fire, you can use it to dodge abilities or ultimates. So the way you want to use it outside of just dodge rolling to reload is if there's somebody like a Magneto throwing an ultimate at you or a Jeff ulting you, you can dodge roll right when it's about to land and it completely go immune during it and avoid getting hit by it. The other thing you can do is if you're fighting, say, another Starlord, shoot at them, and as soon as they start like looking at you to shoot, you can dodge roll and absorb like all of their damage and make them reload. So you absorb all their damage, force them to reload, and then you can trade back after taking no damage. And now that you've turned the fight on them. The last thing I want to talk about with MQ is that while you're flying, it actually stops your vertical velocity. So if you need to stay in the air longer, you could shoot in the air like this, shoot, and then dodge roll to keep momentum high, and also strafe midair. So if you're falling down to the left, you can dodge to the right to kind of have a little mini strafe in the air to make it harder to hit you. Now we can talk about the E. The E is basically just an AoE, as you can see here, but it does full damage to every target you hit with it. So it's actually very good if there's ever a lot of targets near you to use your E, because as you can see, it almost full kills a full HP, like 250 opponent. So that's one really good thing about it. It's very good for finishing off kills. So let's say I'm like mag dumping and I have to reload. Instead of reloading, I can just press E and then finish off the kill that way. And in the background, I'm going to show you like different uses for the E. So one is it's Timmy, where I finish him off with the E. Another big thing is if you're ever fighting with a Doctor Strange or Groot and the enemies are clumped up and stunned, using your E, and I'll show another clip in the background, on a bunch of targets clumped up together is huge, because you're going to be doing an enormous amount of AoE damage, and it's going to be a lot more damage, at least overall, to everybody if you use your E instead of just like left clicking. But if there's only one target, definitely just shoot your gun. You don't want to you just want to finish off a kill with all headshots while they're stunned in Groot ult or Doctor Strange ult. The last thing I do want to mention too is that while you're flying, you can use your E. So I can fly around in my E, as you can see there. So While you're using your E, make sure to fly around to make yourself an even harder target to hit. Now we can talk about the ultimate. The ultimate's pretty simple. You just pop it and you basically get aimbot, and you can dodge roll in the air to reload your mag, so you can get the most amount of damage in your ult. So before you pop it, make sure that you have 2 charges of your dodge roll. That way you get the most amount of damage in your ult, so you're not constantly reloading your gun instead of just outputting a ridiculous amount of damage. The other thing you want to keep in mind when popping your ult is that how are you going to use it? Are you going to wait for the enemy supports to pop their ultimates before you pop your own in order to get the most value out of, you know, Starlord's ult? Or do you want to use your ult to bait out like Luna ult or Mantis ult? And in general, I would actually say that baiting out a Luna Snow ult is way better value than trying to get kills with Starlord. His ultimate, because his ultimate can be like line of sighted. There's a lot of different things. You can have shields that block it. It can be kind of hard to get value out of in a high tier lobby. Now, if you're in low tier lobbies, it's actually going to be quite awesome. But the higher you go, the more people know how to play around it. So in general, like if there's a Luna and she has ult and you want to bait it out so that your team's like Doctor Strange, who in general has a harder to deal with ultimate, you want to secure his ult by baiting out the Luna ult. So you pop your own ult, you shoot the Luna Snow with it, force her to pop her ultimate. That way you bait it out, and then all you have to do is stay alive, keep pressuring with your ult, and then as soon as her ult goes away, then your Doctor Strange can pop his ult and completely wipe a team. So that's one way to use it. The other way to use it, like I said, is to wait for the enemy team to use all their ultis and then pop your own to try to get as many kills as you can. There's really no wrong way to go about it. It just depends on who you're playing with, and if your ultimate is like the strongest ult on your team, then yeah, try to save your ultimate to team wipe them and wait for the enemy supports to pop their ultis. Or if your ultimate is like one of like the mid-tier ultimates on your team, like I said, if you have a Groot or Doctor Strange and you want to bait out an ult, then use your ultimate to force the enemy support to pop theirs. And we can also talk about the team up, which is basically if you're playing without a Morlock, you can revive. So you can play a little bit more aggressively while you have the team up active, and you can die on the flank and revive, or it's pretty simple. You just can revive after dying one time, and with a pretty good, decently long cooldown. And the last thing we could talk about for his abilities are his shift. His shift is basically just he has the ability to fly. And the way you want to use it, there's like 3 main ways to use it. You can use it to avoid damage, to take high ground, or to reposition very quickly. So in terms of avoiding damage, one way you could do it is you could fly over people's heads. So let's say I'm fighting this dude, I could shift over somebody's head and like fly over them, and from their perspective they're going to be like looking over their head and trying to track me. It makes it hard when people, you know, to try to hit somebody when they're above you, like directly. So you can use it that way to, or you can use it to like fly around, zigzag in the air to avoid getting shot. You can also use it to avoid taking or get repositioned to high ground. So say you want to have an off angle flank on the enemy, I could fly up here very quickly and then, you know, unload my mag into the enemy team from a, you know, high ground and an off angle. Or simply if I'm flanking and somebody's trying to like chase me, I can use it to like reposition somewhere else very quickly and basically run away from somebody without dying. And one last thing I want to note with the shift ability is that you want to make sure you don't run out of your shift while you're in danger. So if you're on the flank or you're in an off angle, you want to make sure you don't overuse your shift, because if you do, well, then you can't get away and you can get punished very, very easily. So make sure you take a look at that, the jet fuel gauge, whatever you want to call it, and make sure you don't run out of it. Otherwise, you're going to get punished. All right. So now we could talk about the playstyle. And the best way I can describe Starlord is he's kind of like a worse Psylocke. And the reason I say that is that they kind of fulfill the same role, where they're like close range bursters, right? Who can flank. And his damage, in my opinion, is comparable to Psylocke, but he doesn't have that burst potential. And also he's not as slippery as a Psylocke because he can't go invisible and dashes quick. Like his shift is a bit slower, but it goes for a longer duration and allows him to get verticality. So there's some give and take, but in general, I think don't fall into the category of just trying to perma-flank on the enemy, because you're going to oftentimes die. You are not Psylocke. You have to play it a little bit differently. And the best way for me to describe how aggressive you want to be with him in terms of flanking is really dependent on what you're fighting. So if you're fighting a very slow comp, like if you're fighting Doctor Strange, Magneto, Punisher, Bucky, like all these characters that have a really hard time catching you, then you can try to be a little bit more aggressive with your flanks, try to get into the enemy back line, play above them and around them, and just zip zap around and annoy them to draw attention away from their enemy front line. So if you're distracting the enemy supports, well, now their front line isn't being healed. And that's one important thing about Starlord, is that you are a big distraction. So you don't always have to be getting kills in order to get value. You simply have to be distracting the enemy to get value. And the best way I found to get value is to wait for the enemy front line to engage on your front line. The moment that tanks are kind of interlocked and distracted and fighting each other, and the moment the enemy is taking a lot of damage, that is around the time you want to pounce on the enemy backline. If you can distract both enemy supports for like 5 seconds straight, what's going to end up happening is that they're going to be so distracted with you in the backline that they're not going to heal their team. And then guess what? The enemy frontline, who, you know, just engaged and their supports are ready to heal them, well, they're not prepared for you to annoy their backline just then, and they end up dying. And that works all the way up to the top rating. So you want to time your engages with the enemy engage when everybody's distracted, and you want to be, you know, annoying the backline. Another way you can think about playing Starlord is if you're fighting heavy dive. So for example, if you're fighting a Psylocke, or Black Panther and a Venom, where it's like heavy dive, then you can play more of a counter dive playstyle, because like I said and I showed earlier, your M1 does a lot of damage. You can actually just peel for your team and use your mobility to punish and chase down enemy flankers who try to get in, get a kill, and then get out for free. So instead, you can play around your supports. They will heal you and heal each other to delay the enemy backline from killing people, and then you can like chase the Black Panther down, chase the Psylocke down, get kills, punish the enemy for diving. And just like I've warned you for diving on Starlord, the enemy, if they get too aggressive, you're there to punish them for exactly the same reason. So if the Black Panther wastes a dash and he messes up his combo and tries to get away and like try to climb up a wall, you can chase him down and get the kill. And for precisely that reason is why I told you, you need to be careful heavy flanking on Starlord, because once you're in the enemy backline, it can be tough to get out unless they're not mobile themselves. And the last main takeaway I can give you is talking about off angles in general. No matter what your playstyle is, depending on what you're fighting, if you're taking more aggressive off angles above the enemy in their backline because they can't chase you, or if you're playing more of a safer off angles or counter dive playstyle, you always want to be shooting the enemy from an angle that your team isn't already shooting them from. And the reason for that is it applies a new point of pressure where they have to be careful. You can shove people out of cover. So for example, if you're shooting somebody in the side, well, who's trying to hide behind cover, well, then they have to respond to you shooting them and run out into the open, into the fire of your team. So it applies pressure and forces the enemy team to make a decision to either run away, maybe commit to chasing you, or just straight up dying because you're applying pressure and shooting them out of cover. But when you take an off angle, you don't want to be too aggressive. So you want to be close enough to your team where you can reasonably fly in front of their FOB, so that your supports can heal you and keep you up and sustain you, because like I said, if you get too aggressive, you'll die because you can't be healed. So make sure you're playing near enough to your team, unless you know the maps very well, in which case you can play around health packs. Now, if you understand where all the health packs are in the game, you can position yourself around them. That way you're not as reliant on your supports to keep you up. You simply, go for the health packs whenever you get low. So it just depends on your map knowledge and your game knowledge. And also, the benefit of taking vertical high ground over normal, off angles, which are, on an even playing field to the opponent, is that being above somebody, and I'll show it here, being above them allows you to headshot them easier. So like if I'm above these bots, I can just shoot them and I have a better line of sight, and my bullets are naturally going to headshot. And like I showed earlier, headshots deal an extreme amount of damage. So make sure you're above them. That way it's easier for you to land headshots. And also, when you're above high ground, enemy tanks can't get to you and force you off of a position as easily. But even if they can, like let's say you're fighting a Doctor Strange or a Hulk, simply distracting the enemy tank, especially a Doctor Strange who usually wants to be helping create space for their team through main, by distracting him, you're relieving a lot of frontline pressure from your team to allow them to push forward. And because you're so quick, you know, on Starlord, even if Starlord shoves you off high ground and you fall down below, oftentimes he'll immediately follow that up by jumping off high ground too to help his team. And then all you have to do is keep flying up on high ground, keep annoying him, keep repositioning, keep, like I said, pressuring off angles, keep making the enemy make a decision based off what you do. And the more decisions you force your enemy to make, the more mistakes they're going to make. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to be playing with your team and playing passive. You want to be forcing them to figure out, oh, do I 1v1 and chase Starlord, or do I heal my tanks and risk dying to Starlord? Do I try to shove him off height and risk my team getting bulldozed? Like, you're gonna make the enemy team make decisions. Because you're such a quick and mobile hero, a lot of the time you can't be punished. So use that to your advantage. Use your verticality, your movement, your speed to reposition and get a lot of value. Now we could talk about target prioritization, and specifically like how you want to, you know, go for kills, who are you focusing on and whatnot whenever you're diving or doing whatever. So in general, you're going to want to attack the supports, then the DPS, and then the tank in that order. Primarily because supports are the only units that can heal in this game, so taking them out basically allows your team to win the battle of attrition. If the supports aren't there to heal, the tanks are going to fall over, the DPS are going to fall over. There's not enough health packs on the map to sustain 4 people. So if you take them out, you know, you're looking good. But that doesn't mean that you always should focus the supports. So for example, if your team is focusing a DPS, or if a DPS is really overextended in an easy kill, like say a Punisher who has a very hard time repositioning quickly, or even a Moon Knight who doesn't have any quick escape abilities, then you want to go for the DPS who's isolated. Or if your team is focusing, say, Punisher, and you know your magic is trying to kill him in the backline, well then help your magic finish off a kill, because isolating and doing 2v1 damage to one person will guarantee a kill more than, you know, splitting up your damage, right? Because you already do so much damage on Starlord. If you have a magic helping you, that kill is basically guaranteed, unless like they pop an ultimate or something. And also, while I did mention you want to go for the backline, like the supports and the DPS, don't always be too focused on shooting them. You could also shoot the tank. So for example, if you notice that the enemy tank has no cooldowns, maybe Doctor Strange's shield broke and your Groot walled him off from the enemy team, then focus on the Doctor Strange and finish off that kill, because you can kill tanks extremely easily. Also, if your team is like focusing one tank, don't be afraid to also help them and isolate, because 6 people attacking one tank is going to kill him. Lots of times there really isn't that much coordination, but if you notice an opportunity to finish off a tank kill, go for it as well. And let's say, for example, one of your teammates got picked, like in that example earlier, say your magic is diving, somebody ends up dying and you're retreating, shoot the enemy tank in the head in order to build up your ultimate, because you don't want to be wasting any time. Sure, you're going to have to retreat because you're down a player, but that doesn't mean that you just stop fighting. Try to shoot the enemy and build up your ultimate, because your ultimate is pretty strong, not the strongest in the game, but you can get a lot of kills with it. So use that time to build up ult charge if you have to. And in general, I'd say that's a good idea of how you should target, you know, how you should prioritize targets in this game. So next step, we're going to be talking about matchups, and specifically not about like how to fight each character specifically, but how to deal with certain archetypes of characters. So for example, how you deal with melee, projectile heroes, hit scan heroes, and tanks. So let's start off with melee. How do you want to deal with melee like Magic and Black Panther? Maybe Iron Fist isn't a good one because he can, you know, counter you flying, because you know, he can fly up to you and attack you. But outside of that, a lot of melee fall into this category where they can't catch you in the air. So what you want to do is, if you're ever fighting a melee, simply fly above them and shoot them from above. Use your M2, like I mentioned, to stop your descent and reload your gun midair and strafe, and that way you're in the air away from the melee. They can't punish you because they can't reach you. They're like looking up at you like Willem Dafoe, just like and they have to run. And that's what you want to do. You want to stay in the air, you want to stay above them, keep shooting down at them where they can't retaliate. And when you're fighting projectile heroes, the idea is kind of similar. So if you've ever played Overwatch, you'll kind of understand this concept, but projectile heroes have a very hard time shooting up, and they can't land headshots nearly as easily as they can on horizontal plane, where they can just spam a choke at head level like they're playing Valorant and try to get a lucky headshot. They can't do that in the air. So you want to use that to your advantage. Like if you're fighting a Mantis, always be in the air, fly above them, where their abilities, you know, like her sleep can't hit you. She can't like land her sleep in the air very effectively, nor can she shoot you. So fly around her, shoot down at her like I just did on these bots. And that way you're not as punishable to a lot of projectile heroes. It might be different depending on how good the opponent is. Like if they're a Hawkeye who has a very fast projectile speed, maybe flying in the air is punishable by him. It just depends on how good the player is. But experiment, limit test, really try to feel out your opponent. Like if the enemy Hawkeye can't hit you in the air, you know, keep doing the strategy. But in general, that's how I like to fight projectile heroes. But on the contrary, when you're fighting hit scan, that is when you want to be not flying in the air, because, you know, hit scan like Punisher, Starlord are the ones that you normally want to be using to shoot down people who are in the air, because they can't strafe. Like if I'm in the air, I can't strafe left and right. I can't move, meaning I'm an easy target. So if I'm playing Starlord and the enemy Starlord's like falling from the sky, I can track him easily. So you don't want to be that easy target. What you want to do is you want to be on a horizontal plane, and you want to do the normal strafing left and right, making it hard for the enemy to track you and try to make it more difficult for them to, you know, aim at you and do a lot of damage. On top of that, if you're somebody who's very confident in your aim, let's say you've aim trained a ton like me and you're confident that you can win any 1v1 aim duel, then focus less on your movement, like you're strafing in a fight, and focus more on landing shots. And that is one thing, as somebody who's really confident in their aim, I tend to just barely strafe enough to keep myself moving and to make hitting shots easier, because I'm confident I can outtrade the majority of people in a raw aim duel. But let's say that you're not confident, then you want to do the opposite. Then you want to be trickier, then you want to move more, because you know your aim probably isn't on par with the enemy. So strafe left and right, strafe erratically, throw off their aim, make it harder for them to hit you. That way you can win the aim duel, not just on your aim mechanics, but also on your movement. And it really depends, like the higher and higher you go, and when you start meeting your match in terms of mechanics, then you want to start being more creative. You want to be, you know, strafing more, you want to be playing cover a little bit better. But it just depends on the opponent. Like the easier the opponent is, the less I focus on being tricky, and the more I just focus on landing shots. And then the opposite is true, the better and better my opponents are. And last up, we can talk about fighting tanks, which a lot of the time tanks are pretty easy to get away from because they're not very mobile. But like I said, if you're fighting a melee tank, you don't even oftentimes have to fly away from them because they're so slow. A lot of the time you can just hold S and freaking kite them back in a straight line and just go for headshots and kite them. And by kiting, I mean like you just run away while shooting them and peppering them with bullets. A lot of the time that is enough to win the 1v1. And you're quite good at killing tanks because, like I said, your M1 headshot multiplier is freaking crazy and you can just destroy people. And also, just like with any other matchup, use your M2 to dodge their abilities if you can, and avoid fighting things like Magneto or Doctor Strange, who are very good into fighting bullet characters like Starlord, because they can absorb your damage and trade you. Doctor Strange can even one-shot you if he gets close enough. But in general, just kite tanks, stay away from them, and try to damage them from a distance. And now that we've kind of covered the general ideas and the playstyle and all that of Starlord, now I'm going to show a game, the full game of my rank up game to GM against Timmy, Shroud, Zach Mazer, and I believe Bronzy. And I had fallen out of GM and I was climbing back up and I ended up fighting them. So what better of a match to show you guys than fighting four very, very good FPS players on my GM rank up game where we absolutely destroyed them. And a lot of the things I talked about in this video are demonstrated in that gameplay. So please, you know, if you want to understand and see a more demonstrated version of how to play Starlord, make sure to watch the rest of the video. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm out.
Looks like the mission area is yours.
I feel like armor would be good. I mean, like rampant is good, but
I was looking for one of these.
yeah, they're just too cool. Ethereal shift, knockdown.
Mission area is yours.
Reloading.
Yeah, they're looking now, they're looking for it.
Another Ankh who will rid us of Moon Knight. Oh, Oh, sweet moves, right?
Oh, what are you doing, Seven? Oh, yeah. Come on, man. GG.
I have destroyed a troublesome arc.
My left.
I feel like I'm being watched.
Look up behind you.
The moon haunts you.
Us against the world.
Watch me soar!
Oh, sweet moves, right?
Oh,
Behold the god of thunder!
Double kill.
I mean, like, look at this guy. 2 and 10. What can you even do?
Oh my god, we are fucking destroying Timmy.
There's actually nothing you can do right there. You just have to lose.
Hey, let me
Me and
copy
McGinnis are
off.
playing good, too.
okay.
Hey, Mantis Assault.
Unlucky.
We try and force Mantis Assault though.
Happy.
Legitimately nothing we can do.
I don't know if they use. Just play for point. We have Starlord.
Come back, come back. You're
They're
missing
walking
one.
left. They're walking left.
Wow.
Play, and then these two characters, who are supposed to be good, mind you.
Sweet moves, right?
I'm gonna double team.
Let's keep fighting until we have a winner.
I'm telling you that, like, no matter how much they try to buff Infernus, it'll never change anything. He'll always be shit until they just make him solid. Base. His burn should be better.
Our enemies are near. Did you see that?
Peter's will. You got them all. Much of this could be destroyed. Double
You
kill.
need to increase his burn. Yeah, but if you increase his burn, then
Above, connector. Down, down, down. Bring it back.
With a big win.
Go. Smoke them.
Oh, baby. Did you see that?
Us against the world.
Is that their ult or our ult?
It's there.
I unleash the Vishanti.
Three lights. Looks like the missionary.
Could be like point.
After now. Look up behind you. Missionary is yours.
Tremble before blast.
Killed
Panther,
me.
bro, Panther.
Got their one. If you have Mantis Soul, just hide. Don't die, don't die. Just wait for Mantis.
He's so down.
Can't keep me down for long.
What else do they have? Might be able to get Mantis Soul though.
Nice big ult.
By the eye of Agamotto.
Oh my god, you just saved me.
It pleases me to be helpful.
Thank you, you saved me.
You captured more than half of the mission area.
Give me up, give me up.
We are undefeatable.
You got our ult out.
Look up behind you.
Go left, they're sticking on left.
Armed and dangerous. That's the stuff. Oh, sweet moves, right?
Change him back.
Yikes. We all know they felt that, Mantis.
Enemy has arrived.
Glory is almost yours.
We did use both the sword ult, so be careful.
Bro, they are just running in one by one.
I unleash us against the world.
So dead.
Keep fighting
stuck
until we have a
there.
winner.
It's fine.
I just you don't waste anything. No, don't use your ulti, bro. There. I give you ult. That was such a bad ult.
Okay.
Can't keep me down for long.
And I am.
We back up.
Oh, I have that on my phone. Jesus Christ, bro. You guys are fucking mowing them right now.
Yeah.
And loaded.
We lost.
gotta pick, we gotta pick.
See that? Just what the doctor ordered. Do your worst.
Change your nose, bro. In the middle. Got him.
Sterner challenges await.
Gather around. Let's keep fighting until we have a winner.
Did you see that?
I'm opening a portal.
Good shit, Renon. You're a beast.
Thank you, GG.
Another epic
Is that a
victory.
tuber or what? We putting that on the tube? On the YouTube?